FDA panel voted to recommend emergency use authorization for the Moderna vaccine for kids between 6 months and 5 years old.
They anticipate that the youngest group of kids, so that group under 5, should be able to get vaccines starting on June 21st. So we would imagine that CDC is also poised to recommend these vaccines, which would begin the process of rolling them out for these age groups. Developing vaccines for any kind of younger age group or immunocompromised group or group that is outside of the healthy adult group is difficult. A, that group is smaller, and B, you want to be extra sure that there are no possible safety concerns, considering these groups may already be at risk for some other health issues. In the case of kids, there were some concerns with Moderna's application for kids 17 to 6, that there may be some inflammation of the heart that might be a side effect. However, it doesn't seem like that's been as much of a concern for the advisors to the Food and Drug Administration based on additional data that the company submitted. Because it's difficult to enroll enough children for these clinical trials, FDA has established that it will accept a different criteria than it would for adults. So for adults, FDA laid out that it would only be accepting and authorizing vaccines that were at least reducing coronavirus infections by 50%. For kids, it said that applicants can have data that shows that they generate similar immune responses as young adults. So what happened back in February is Pfizer submitted data to FDA, and it didn't quite meet that, what they call immunobridging criteria, didn't meet that with just 2 doses. So now Pfizer has resubmitted data looking at 3 shots, and it seems like those are producing the same kind of robust immune response we'd be looking for. In the beginning of the pandemic, it looked like kids who were really young were faring the best with coronavirus. We saw that people who were older or had other health issues were the ones who were getting really sick. But as the pandemic has gone on and as we've started to reopen again, we've seen an increase in kids getting really sick from coronavirus. There are about 19 million kids who are unable to get a vaccine at this moment in time. And that's really difficult as they're going back to school. So we are seeing an increase in severe disease among kids. Again, it's not super high, but it's substantial if you have young kids in your life. It's really tricky to develop vaccines for kids because they're not just tiny adults. Scientists have had to work really hard to figure out what the optimal dosage is for children, so they're getting that same kind of immune response, that future protection from infections, but also not getting too sick from too much of an immune response. So yes, for teens, there's a lower dosage of the shots in both cases, I believe, from Pfizer and Moderna. And then for the youngest babies, there's an even lower dosage. And those dosages were chosen based on what appears to be minimally effective for generating that immune response that's similar to adults, but also not so much that there's a risk that these kids would feel really sick and achy, not in a dangerous way, but definitely in an uncomfortable way, like we felt with some of the side effects from adult vaccines. It's difficult to say which vaccine is more effective because it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. Pfizer and BioNTech are submitting results based on 3 shots, whereas Moderna is submitting data based on 2 shots. So while it seems like Pfizer's vaccine is more effective at preventing coronavirus infections, they're not quite comparable based on the number of shots kids in these trials have been getting.
I do have some concerns about this vaccine. I just want to sort of air them. It does worry me, actually, that there was no protection after dose 2. That was surprising. I think it was probably surprising for the company.
I have a lot of concern that many of these kids will not get the 3rd dose. As we know, it's a struggle to get people in for 2. We've already seen with the boosters for adults, lots of people don't take them. And so my concern is that you have to get the 3 doses to really get what you need.
White House officials are definitely planning on working with communicating messages to pediatricians, other kind of community healthcare providers to make sure that they are aware that these vaccines are safe and effective. The decision next gets kicked over to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And they too have said they are going to convene their meetings of their external advisory committee. Should CDC's advisors recommend the vaccine for these different age groups, CDC will ultimately have to make the decision whether they want to recommend these vaccines as well. And once that happens, then they'll be available for prescribers everywhere.